Hi, everyone. Welcome to a Kids Life podcast. I'm Angela Lockwood, and I hope you've been having a wonderful week, a wonderful weekend. I'm recording this first thing on a Monday morning, and it's been a really full weekend. We're in that finals time of kids' sport, so we're going here, there, and everywhere. But how exciting! I sometimes feel like Monday mornings is that time where you have to wake up and recover from the weekend. You almost need a weekend to get over the weekend. But it's a lovely morning this morning, and I was reflecting over the weekend. If you've been following my socials, you would have seen me reflecting, writing on a piece of paper just around what things happened in the past week. And one of the really big things I wanted to share with you was an experience I had at one of the local schools last week. And it was a real eye-opener for me on so many levels about how amazing kids actually really are. And of course, I know this anyway. I live and breathe working with kids and helping kids sort of stay connected to what they need to do as kids and play and socialize and stay focused on the things that really matter for them too. But last week, this amazing school held a science fair. And if you've ever been to one of your own kids' science fairs, you will know that they're pretty full on. Like, they are big days. I came home, I was exhausted. And if you did see my socials around about this time, if you scroll back through, it was there was an image I put on my in my socials of me laying in a swing, recovering from the day after having a little bit of hitting my own overwhelm point for the day. And I had one of the boys say to me, "Mrs. Lockwood, you need to go to the sensory room." And the sensory room was a room that I've set up in a school to help kids sort of just press pause and decompress if they're feeling like they're a little bit overwhelmed in their day and they need a little bit of quiet space and a little bit of time out, maybe move their bodies a little bit in a different way to just running around in the playground. And I needed it at the end of this science fair. It was just like a overwhelm of senses. But I want to talk to you about this experience of allowing our kids to have space to create. And one of the things I noticed in this science fair was just how remarkable kids are when us as adults give them space to be so. And it was this wonderful teacher who loves science, has a science background, and this is in primary school setting. And she believed that having a science fair would be fantastic, a wonderful experience for the kids and for them to be creative and for them to share their ideas and also, of course, explore the love of science and of learning. And now, as you know, teachers who take on these projects, I don't think ever fully appreciate the amount of time and effort that goes into creating these things. And I know this teacher who was doing this, she was amazing, and it would have taken her so many lunchtimes, so many breaks, so many after school planning sessions to bring this together. But one thing I know is watching her over the course of the day was a really special thing, because you could see the pride in her and, of course, the exhaustion as the day went on. But it was really amazing to see that, sometimes we go, no, we're too busy. We can't do that. We're already involved in this. But when you're doing something in your passion area that you know you want to do for kids, or something that you know that really lights you up, the work and the effort that you put in is really worth it. And it was over the course of this day. Let me just give you a little bit of background around what the science fair was about. Kids had to put in their ideas, they had to fill in a form and apply for it. And it was going through some scientific thinking about why, what their predictions were, what they were hoping would happen as a part of the project, what did they think the outcome was going to be, and how are they going to test it. So it wasn't just like a create something and see what happens. They had to really think about it before they even started. And one of the things that I loved was seeing all the different ideas and also the different types of kids that were wanting to be a part of the science fair. It wasn't just the kids who, I guess, were excelling at school, who love science. It was also kids that wanted to do things socially with other kids. So they might have had a couple of their friends that joined a group and they said, hey, let's do this. This would be a fun project. It was also kids where I guess I was involved a little bit in is supporting the kids who have difficulty with their learning at school, or the kids who, could use a collaborative project to work on to help build their social skills. And for me, I was sort of had my foot in two different camps. One was with a group of kids who were all neurodiverse kids. They were all kids who were had a diagnosis of being on the autism spectrum, and amazing brains, amazing kids, but really struggle with socially interacting. So they would spend oftentimes hanging next to a teacher during recess and lunch, or they would find it difficult to make those social connections with other kids. So I used this as an opportunity to bring kids together, to teach them social skills, to let them practice being with other kids, to let them practice that flexibility of thinking and all those things that we as adults can sometimes take for granted in social situations. And it was, I know some teachers thought, oh my gosh, she's going to have her hands full here, because these kids were high energy. You know, they were kids who felt that their own ideas were the only ideas that would work. And but for me, it was an area of an area that I saw that these kids could really flourish in, that they could really thrive in. That the boys, and they all were boys, they were boys who had brilliant minds and could really work through a problem. And, you know, of course, they loved tech, they loved designing. So our project was actually based on going through game design process, which I sort of laid out this process for them around some of the basics of game design, and help sort of give them a little bit of structure and a little bit of a framework to go by. In order for them to come up with a game for another student in the school who is nonverbal. She has Rett syndrome, so she mobilizes using a wheelchair, and she's nonverbal, so she uses an eye gaze machine to communicate. Now, if you're never familiar or never seen that, and don't worry, most people haven't, it's actually, it looks like an iPad, and that people who are nonverbal or have who have difficulty communicating in that, using that medium, they actually communicate with their eyes, and that uses like a vision bar, I guess, that picks up their eye tracking. Really amazing technology that has come so far. And this young girl is just such a phenomenal young girl. She's amazing. And she's really, with the help of her speech therapist and also the teacher's aide, has really come along a very long way with how she uses her communication device to communicate. And what I felt was it would be good to give our boys this sense of a bigger purpose, something that was outside of themselves, that they could engage in, and that they could create something for somebody else. And they all really respect and like this young girl. And so to me, it was a no-brainer that we would try to create, using a game design process and using their amazing way of thinking and perspective, to come up with a numeracy game for this young girl that needs to go on her eye gaze machine. And they had to factor in things like, what's her interests? What are the things that she likes to do? What would work? So if she was to look at one thing, what would need to happen when she looked at that icon, and what page would it have to go to next? And it was really awesome right at the beginning to see the kids come in, because they weren't all friends. They weren't all kids that hung out with each other. There were kids in different age groups, different years. So the first couple of sessions was really about helping the kids to navigate being in a room with other kids, to be in a room where one child might have been a little bit louder, or had behaviors that were a bit different to what they're used to. Or they were kids who maybe one idea was a lot, they had an idea that was a lot louder and stronger in their delivery to what the other kids were. And you can imagine it was interesting really to watch these young boys, but it was also interesting in a way that it really made me realize just how difficult a lot of kids do navigate social experiences in their childhood, and how hard it is for them when they don't know those rules, or they don't have the understanding of, well, when that child does that, or when I do this is what could happen. And so it was a really special experience for me to be able to be a part of this, and to see these group of quite remarkable young boys come together. And yes, it was challenging at the beginning, but to see how they became comfortable with each other. And when another boy really flatly says to them, that idea is stupid, that they can, not blow up at them, that they can work through, okay, so why is that? What else is it that you think I could do differently? But this is the way, that I wanted to do that. They had all these conversations. It was really quite a special process. And these boys would give up lunch 2 days a week. And it ended up becoming, I guess, a haven for them in that they felt comfortable, they felt creative, they felt confident to be able to share their own ideas and also to come up with something really cool. So we had the student who they were designing the game for come in to the group, and she was sitting there and they were asking her, what do you think about this? Do you like this? And they had some rules that they set up at the beginning where it had to include the student at every step of the way. It had to be interesting for her. There was always supportive conversations between all the boys, and these were rules that they came up with. And I absolutely loved it because at the beginning, I guess I was a little bit more involved. I was right there. And then what I could do is actually step out of the room over the course of the program, and I could step out and just let them do their thing. And of course, being a game designer, it was in their area of interest, so that was really interesting for them. It kept them engaged. Now, it doesn't mean some of the kids didn't come and go. Some of the kids, which I loved, and I sort of said this to myself, that if they wanted to go outside and play with their peers rather than being in the room, then that's okay with me. Because the whole purpose in the back of my head was a socially designed group, so that we're using that interest for them. That's a bigger picture in their area of interest. But ultimately, I wanted them to come together and create with other kids. And if they wanted to go out and play Tiggy or run around in the playground one lunchtime, their body probably needed it. It was a great opportunity for them to play with their peers. I was like, absolutely no worries. But every single time the boys went out, and next lunch break, they came back in and they were ready to go. And we had a process. So we kept a Google slide sort of together where all the boys, I shared it all with them, and all the boys could add in their ideas, and we took photos of what we were doing so that there was a sense of progress. And the thing that I loved really also, actually, there were so many things I loved about this process, but watching these young boys really have a space where they could make mistakes, have a space where they weren't laughed at if something didn't work, or that if they had an idea and someone else wanted to add to it, that it wasn't like a sense that their idea wasn't right or was silly. It was actually about, hey, when you and I work together, we can actually do really cool things together. Our ideas could be enhanced. And sometimes, that needed a little bit of facilitation from me. And there was a teacher's aide as well who was working with me on this, and she was unbelievable. She was like the IT guru, because let's face it, eye gaze machine technology is not my area of skill. The bringing the kids together and building their confidence and helping them work through the process, that's all my area of expertise. But the IT was so not. But what was really funny is some of the kids, they became the IT guru and they knew exactly what they needed to do. So we went from this Google slide of coming up with ideas to them getting to the point where we had to transition it onto the eye gaze machine, which is a whole different way of technology. It's a whole different platform. But what the boys did is, I guess at this point, it did become a bit like, okay, we've done our bit. Is it working? Is it testing? Were things working as it should? And then we had to sort of come up with the final point and go, you know what, this is good enough. This works. It meets our criteria. We've gone through the process. And that all culminated in the science fair. And we didn't have the science fair originally. It was going to be a project where we will just keep going until we were happy to finish. But I have to admit, I was really happy to have the science fair as our final point because it gave the kids a deadline. It gave the kids, okay, guys, we've got this date that we are working towards. We need to have it ready by then. So it kept them motivated. It kept them focused, not thinking that this thing was going to be going on forever. And what I loved is it became a lunchtime program that went to lunch and recess. And yes, I had to give up my lunch and recess, but I never felt like it was giving up anything because I loved it. Oh my gosh, it was so energy giving. And it was when I was watching these boys in this creative zone of genius, it was pretty cool to watch. But the thing was the science fair. So we went through this whole process. We got to the science fair, and now these boys, some of them had really high sensory needs. So they didn't love loud noise. So one of the boys wears headphones, and some of the boys also don't like interacting with other people. They find being in a closed space really overwhelming. And what I loved is the teacher understood this. The teacher that organised the science fair understood this. So she considered the position that we were in. She considered when the judges would come up and speak to the boys and how we were placed. And it was really special. And it was a perfect example of how inclusion needs to look in schools. That consideration was given to the learning needs of the kids, but it was also about just including them in the science fair. So they weren't off in another room on their own. They weren't, plopped in a corner somewhere on their own. They were a part of the school community, just with some slight considerations to help them be successful in that space. And it was a beautiful moment for me because I could stand back and watch these young boys. Even at times they would look at me and go, Mrs. Lockwood, I am really struggling right now. One of the boys said how scared he was in that space. Now, what was really, and that's not a cool thing, of course, but what he could do is he could identify how he was feeling, and he had the strategies on board because we prepared these kids for this experience. And when we sort of spoke to him about the strategies he could use, that he knew it, he was the one that spoke to the judges, and it just brought such a smile to my face to see these young kids standing there so confident. Despite being nervous, despite feeling anxious, they had the strategies on board. They felt included within that school community, and so they could be brave enough to talk to the judges. They could be brave enough to share their ideas and what worked and what didn't without any adult intervention at that point in time. And it was that moment where you can stand back and go, yeah, there was a lot of work went into this. Yes, there was a lot of intervention that went into this. There was a lot of time, but nothing beats that moment when you can step away as an adult and let kids fly. Let kids be who they need to be. Let them draw on their confidence. Let them be able to make the mistakes that they need. And our job really as adults is to be there, is to facilitate that process for them, to give them the strategies that they need when they need it, but also knowing when it's time to step back. And watching these kids with these judges just so proudly give them, share this experience with them. They did end up going on to win a highly commended award, but it wasn't the overall award. That the judges actually said that they couldn't believe the process and the way that these kids went through the whole game design process and what they created. So they gave them another award that wasn't even a part of the science fair, which I thought was so amazing because it was so different. It was such a different way of looking at things. And that's what I loved so much, that they were kids who they do think differently. They're kids who do have different perspectives, who see things in a different way. So of course the final product was different because they see things differently. And it was such a beautiful moment. Even a couple of the boys' parents came in, and to watch parents tear up when they saw these young boys confident, saying they can't believe that that's their son standing there. So I wanted to share this with you about this science fair. There's a couple of things I want you to take away from today. Number one, for the teachers who, have an idea in their passion area that they'd love to do, but they feel like they don't have the time, the energy or the space. What is important is the experience that you're giving the kids. That I looked around, not just with the kids at the group that I was working with, but I looked around the whole room. And when I walked around and looked at all the different projects, the pride in the kids was so beautiful. The kids showing in some of the words that they used, I have no idea what they were talking about. I had no idea what they were talking about, but they knew, and that's all that mattered. And they were sharing these beautiful projects that you can tell they spent a lot of time in. I'm sure a lot of parents helped as well along the process with a lot of that. But for those kids who you could tell did most of it themselves, that was really special because they were so proud of what they did, and they were so proud of their effort. And having that science fair gave them an opportunity to showcase their expertise, and it was just beautiful. It was so wonderful to watch. And then I also think, so for those teachers who have that passion area, absolutely spend the time, get the support if you need to. And these environments to help kids be creative and to test and wonder and be curious, that's the stuff that really helps kids learning. That's the opportunities to help kids really flourish and thrive, and to have that sense of accomplishment and achievement at the end. That is all driven by them. That is something that I guess kids builds resilience for kids. They may not win it. They go around the room and they've got the judges there. They have to state their case. They have to bring on their their sense of thinking and their why they got to that sort of point. And that sort of thinking is life skills. And whether or not they win or not doesn't matter. It's the process. And so teachers, if you get the opportunity or you've got a burning desire in a particular area that you love, please bring the kids in. Kids really amaze us when we give them the space to be curious and creative, and we can step out of the way. Really remarkable opportunities for these kids. The other thing on what the science fair really showed me as well was for kids having the opportunity to test and create and work out what they want to do and think about what the potential outcome is, and to get to a point where they have to present and know what they're doing. Gosh, that builds so many skills for kids. If we show kids that we believe that they're capable and we treat them as capable kids, then they will become capable. They will be the kids who, if they know that we trust them, that we're curious as adults, that we want to see what they're thinking, we want to see, what their ideas are, then kids will always just take that and run with it. Because when they know that they're safe, when they know that they can fail but keep going and be supported, when they know that we're there for them no matter what, they will always step up to the plate. And in fact, most of the time they'll absolutely exceed our expectations. So this science fair, although I was exhausted, although I had to lay on a swing in the sensory room at the end of the day, the noise was out of control, which is another reason I was so proud of all the kids, because they coped so well, showcasing their skills, not just to adults, but to other students. And those other students, they were inspired by what their peers were creating. And who knows, next year, there might be a whole new lot of kids come through because they saw what was possible. That science fair, oh my gosh, reflection of last week. My hat goes off to the teacher who created that, the principal who supported that, and all the teachers that rallied around. What an amazing opportunity for our kids to really step out and thrive in a learning environment that doesn't always necessarily need to heavily involve us adults, but it was a pretty amazing experience. So what is burning in you? If you're a teacher right now that's listening to this, what's burning in you that you could do to create this amazing opportunity? If you're a parent, it's about looking and going, I'd love you to think about and just reflect on, with our kids, how much are we involved with their thinking? It is important to be involved, to work with them and support them, but how much space do we give them? So when these assignments come home from school, are we the one that's staying up late at night making it for them? Or are we co-collaborating with them? Or are we just supporting them, but they can come up with the end products? And even though that end product may not be what we would create, or it may not be this polished, slick outcome, how much are we allowing our kids to go through that process? And just know that they're safe, know that they've got what they need, that they can ask you a question if they need to, but that creative process is really where the learning happens. So my science fair, I love it. I'm glad it's not happening this week. I don't know if my energy would allow for it, but I'm definitely going to be ready for next year and for whatever next opportunity that we have in any of the schools to support our kids. But if you liked this and you want to share it maybe with a teacher or even with your own principal, then please share this episode and they can have a listen about how other schools are doing it. But if there's any questions that you have about how you can instill creative thinking and curious thinking in your kids, then please DM me or make a comment in the comments below. If you do love a Kids Life podcast, please share, subscribe, and let people know about it. I'm really passionate about supporting our kids and also the adults that support our kids. And it's really important that when we're all working together, we're staying focused on what's important in our lives, then really, truly special things can happen. Thanks for listening, everyone. I'm Angela Lockwood. Thanks for joining me on A Kid's Life podcast.